Hello, my name is Chris Parham, and this is my mid-semester review for the Mass College of Art DMI program. And these projects that I'm about to show are from my Foundations of Graphic Design class and also my prototyping class. And the first thing I wanted to show was we had to do a project where we basically had to take four squares and create a word around those, kind of depicting the word through the four squares. So, for instance, there was joy, increase, bold, congestion, and then shy, and then friendship. So the one that I decided to go with was shy. And I'm going to show you the pieces that I came up with that concern the word shy. Set one common characteristics and then set two common characteristics. So what I did was I have the word shy going on up here where I have everything hidden basically. And I did the same thing at the bottom as well, where I tried to do the same thing for the word congestion down here. But for the first one that I chose the word shy. And I've got everything hidden that you can see. All the squares are propped. All squares are within the same width and the height. So that was one project for my class. And my next project has to do with we had to take a found object and we basically had to go with five categories. To your left, you're going to see one for gesture. Then this one is for simplify. This one is for graphic. This one is basically for radical. And then this one is nirvana. Basically, what kind of design would we come up with the radical and turn it into a nirvana? Something that's you know crazy looking, that type of thing. So I decided to go with the stars and stripes for my project. And then my next project as well, and this had to do with the found objects, of which you'll see here. This is the found object that we had to do, and we had to do a bunch of different things in terms of cropping it, taking light and dark and shadows and so on. So, for instance, I took, for instance, gesture, graphic, simplified, and radical. This is the project before we came up with the fifth idea. So, for instance, we had to choose three good ones for gesture, three good ones for graphic, three good ones for simplified, and three good ones for radical. So I decided to go with the horse idea. And then the same thing down here, I kind of made it kind of crazy. And the same thing with that, where I have the stripes going on in there as well. And I did the same thing with the graphic, as you can see, where I made it really, really simple, very easy to look at. And the same thing with gesture as well, where I kind of like, you kind of make it with the gesture, it's kind of like a sweeping kind of move. So, for instance, when you go back to this, as you can see, I have a bunch of different things going on, but I have to keep all the bottles, for instance, at the same height and at the same weight and so on. So that's what I ended up coming up with that as well. Um, and then I did the same thing too with the cropping. So we had to do a project where we had to take that found object and just do a whole bunch of different croppings to make some type of thing go on in terms of how to make cropping become a piece of art. How do you make all these things combine, no matter like how you put them and where you put them and so on, how you place them, where you place the objects and so on. So that was something that I felt was a lot of fun, and at the same time, it's a lot of work because you're doing a lot of different things with different types of crops. So how do you make those crops speak to each other? How do you make those crops do something? You know. So my next project, for instance, deals with my prototyping class for George. And the thing is, with this project, and I'm going to go back to my other ones as well. But with this project, what I was trying to do is I have, this is kind of a continuation of my Blues Box project from last year. But this time, what I have is I have inside each of the projects, I have a cave painting as the base. And I also have different instruments. I have 6 African instruments and 6 American instruments. So, for instance, this is all based on the blues. So, for instance, as you can see here, this is the main one of the cave paintings that I'm using to tell the story of how do I, for instance, show that when during that time when African tribes called for war, when they went hunting, when the new queen was born, when the new king was born, when the new king was making a proclamation of some kind, could those things be tied into the blues? Could those things, for instance, with the cave paintings that show pictures of people doing music and people hunting and so on, how can I correlate those two? How can I make those things happen in terms of making those different types of instruments speak in terms of how do they relate to American blues music? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you also, you guys, a second set of ideas that I have as well. So I wanted to show a bunch of different ideas because the thing is, there are so many instruments from Africa, but I'm specifically looking for instruments that were basically kind of, based on the blues. So, for instance, um, I'm trying to make these instruments do a bunch of different things, and how do they relate to American blues? How do they relate to blues music, but also what do they do? How do they connect? And what I like about this project in terms of the CAD idea is the fact that I'm able to move things around, and also too, it works in a way of like being able to turn it and being able to spin it and so on. So I'm going to go on to my next one, and it takes a while. I apologize, but I'm just basically trying to show what these things are going to be doing in terms of when I build. I'm going to be building my project out of wood, and I'm going to be using the laser lab downstairs at Mass. So I'm doing the same thing here, where I'm showing basically the different cave paintings and how they relate to what they're saying. These cave paintings go back to at least 10,000 years in Western Africa. And the thing is, they show a lot in terms of what they're trying to do and so on. So, for instance, as you can see as I move this around, and I'm going to show it this way so you can see the actual cave painting itself. So it's doing a bunch of different things, and I'm also just trying to show the correlation between African music, and which is folk music, which is based in country music, literally, and also how slaves, for instance, in America, how they relate in terms of slave songs, call and response, work songs, working in the field, call and response. The same things that were happening in Africa came to America as well. And so it's just important for me to try to get across the idea that with my project, I'm basically trying to show the connection. So, for instance, this instrument here is called a balafon, which is based on a xylophone. And this is also a trumpet as well in Africa. And this being the djembe, which is the drum. And then over here, we've got the stand-up bass, we've got the acoustic guitar, we've got the trumpet, we've got the banjo, and the banjo does come from Africa, and it's based on this instrument called the njongi, excuse me. And it's a string instrument like this one. So it's kind of based on this instrument right here as well. So it's just really important for me to try to get across the idea of um, I'm going to be having people play music through these. I'm going to have the instruments basically put on the prototype so people can play the instruments, but also compare notes in terms of how different an African instrument sounds compared to an American instrument. Or, for instance, how the difference between a djembe and a regular drum set. You know, where does the drum set come from? Does the drum signal the whole idea of communication? Did the drum speak to the people? You know what I mean? And that's basically what I was trying to do in terms of showing how these things work, but also showing how they relate to American music, how they relate to jazz, and then later with rock and roll and so on. But where do those things come from? I'm not, and the thing is, I'm really trying to find out through the projects themselves. How they, for instance, how they connect. How do they connect to the wider audience of how we listen to music, how music communicates. So, for instance, this is my last one that I'm going to be showing, and this is also a cave painting as well. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different things going on within this cave painting. It could be something dealing with the king, something dealing with music, something dealing with hunting. And what I really like about this is just the way that it kind of moves around in terms of the colors, how they show. You know what I mean? Like, I really love the way these colors and the way that they move within this design. You know, So I've got all my different instruments going on, and it works out really well. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for listening to my project. Thank you.